You're watching ClearCut. Welcome back. A Japanese broadcaster is apologizing after issuing a false alarm about a ballistic missile strike. National broadcaster NHK sent a phone alert to subscribers saying that North Korea had likely launched a missile and said that the government told people to get to safety. NHK corrected the mistake within minutes, and Tuesday's mistake comes on the heels of a similar error in Hawaii. The state's emergency alert notification issued a false alarm on Saturday, causing panic for nearly 40 minutes. Officials later said that the mistake was the result of human error, blaming a staffer mistakenly selecting the live alert button instead of the test alert. Well, joining me now is Jeff Schlegelmilch. I hope I said that right.
Perfect.
All right. Deputy Director for the National Center for Disaster Preparedness at Columbia University. Jeff, nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Jeff, if you look at that Hawaii story and the guy pressed the wrong button, is it that easy to make this kind of a mistake?
Apparently at the time it was, although apparently they're looking into it more and trying to create sort of dual, so two people have to turn their digital keys, if you will. And with all the panic that causes from sort of pushing the wrong button on the system, if we look at the full continuum of systems that are responsible for nuclear detection and nuclear launch, it certainly is not the worst kind of mistake that could happen.
You mean rather have an alert that turns out to be a false alarm than not have an alert?
Right, or an early warning radar that's detecting something that's not something else. But I think it goes to show that with these, as we rely more and more on these really complex systems to sort of notify us and to interpret information for us, that, you know, it creates more vulnerabilities. And as more countries are out there developing nuclear weapons and there's the opportunity of them falling into the wrong hands, it creates more and more opportunities for things to go
Jeff,
wrong.
it's curious that it took so long to rectify this. I mean, for almost 40 minutes, you had people in Hawaii scrambling, terrified, not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Why did it take so long to correct this?
You know, there are a lot of things with this that I think we'll just see coming out of the next few weeks, but I think that that's a great question because on the one hand, the first question is, of course, why did they push the wrong button? And then the second question being, why did it take so long for them to realize that the entire, you know, set of islands was in this state of panic? What was going on with their situational awareness?
Well, what was likely happening back in D.C. when this went down?
You know, it's unclear if it actually, that notification escalated up to actually notify things from, you know, things that we're seeing and things that we're hearing. It didn't escalate that far, so it was really on the ground in the islands. But I think that, you know, that unfortunately now the hard look is really going to be on what went wrong, and that's very necessary. But at the same time, there's also an opportunity to talk about why these messages are out there, why they're being tested, why they're being developed. People are paying attention to these things. People are concerned about nuclear weapons, and there's some, you know, simple tips that can be provided that is getting washed out in the controversy of these systems.
That's exactly what I want to know, because learning about this, I was thinking, okay, if this happened here in New York, like, what do I do? Where do I go? What are the precautions that I'm supposed to take? What are you supposed to do? What is the best course of action if you're in a city like New York and you get that kind of alert?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, first of all, if there's some sort of alert of a ballistic missile threat, something like that, you want to take shelter, get out of the open.
Take shelter where? I mean, if we're talking about a nuclear missile strike.
Well, and all the more reason why I think there needs to be more of an open discussion about why these messages are being developed, because I think that these are a lot of good questions that at the time you're getting the alert, you don't have the opportunity to talk with folks about. And in a nuclear detonation where there's actually radioactive material out there, we've seen studies and models that show that you could save tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands or millions of lives by people appropriately sheltering rather than trying to evacuate.
How many fallout shelters are in a city like New York?
So actually the fallout shelter, you'll see the signs kind of throughout the cities as relics from the Cold War, but the fallout shelter program has not been active for many, many decades. And so those signs are actually relics of the Cold War, but there is no sort of civic fallout shelter program that's in place anymore.
Do you think there should be one then?
I think that there should certainly be a discussion of how to appropriately shelter in place. The information is out there. Messages are being developed really across the country on how to shelter in place. And some simple steps where people can self-shelter in place is probably a more efficient use of money and use of attention than the fallout shelter program. But right now, I think there's opportunities to do more.
Well, you know, I went and Googled, like, where is the nearest nuclear fallout shelter near my apartment and near the office. As you say, it probably won't do me any good because they're not active and they're not stocked. But if I'm in the building, do I run to the basement? Is that my best course of action?
Yeah, I mean, the main...
Hope for the best?
Absolutely, and I mean, the main thing is that you have this radioactive material that's going to be coming down about 15, 20 minutes after a nuclear blast. You want to get in a way that's a place that's going to shield you from radiation. Cars are bad, by the windows are bad, wood-framed houses are bad, but these heavy concrete buildings that we have in New York City actually tend to be very good shelters. You want to get to the interior, away from the walls. The basement is usually a good spot, not too close to the roof, because you'll have material falling on the roof as well.
Well, we saw some footage of people in Hawaii lowering their kids into manholes, going underground. Is that a good move?
Well, no. I mean,
No?
I think because it's not a design shelter, and I think
well, they're
goes to show-
improvising.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have to make do, is that something you should consider doing?
Well, the main thing is that you really want to get into a building and you really want to get out of the way, because these particles, this dust that's coming through areas that aren't sealed in a manhole or through an open window, they're going to contaminate you there. And again, I think this is all about, you know, we need to have these conversations before the alerts go out so people have the opportunity to ask questions. Otherwise, we're going to find people putting themselves and other people in harm's way, sort of reacting in a very uninformed and panicked manner to these messages. And I hope that that's what is the additional lesson learned, other than simply trying to fix the button.
Yeah, absolutely. We do need to start disseminating the necessary information. Well, thanks for helping us figure it out. Jeff Schlegelmilch, Deputy Director at the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.